Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Nikhar Agarwal, Associate Editor, ETCIO. I extend to you all a very warm welcome to today's discussion on fast-tracking smart manufacturing innovations from edge to core, an initiative by ETCIO and Comscore. Increasing competition in the manufacturing industry puts pressure on organizations to reduce costs, improve customer experience, and boost operational efficiency. Organizations armed with digital forces are disrupting business models with new value propositions. This disruption causes a challenge for manufacturing organizations, but is also a chance to adopt digital themselves. Moreover, the key to manufacturing transformation and innovation lies in unlocking the potential of the technologies at the core of smart manufacturing or Industry 4.0 that are IoT, AI, ML, automation, robotics, big data, analytics, AR, VR, and more. However, the acceleration of digital adoption places IT infrastructure at the center of this transformation wave across the entire manufacturing value chain, from the factory floor to supply chain to distribution and logistics. Therefore, it is imperative for manufacturers to strengthen their IT network and infrastructure with next generation technology stack. And here comes the cloud-enabled converged network solutions. Cloud-based converged networks can help unlock the potential of the IT infrastructure today while laying the foundation for tomorrow by supporting the speed and scale demands of modern and autonomous manufacturing capabilities. To learn more on how converged networks can help manufacturing organizations deliver the speed, simplicity, efficiency that lets them scale where, when, and how they need, we have with us today Mr. Vasudevan Venkatakrishnan, Business Development Director, Asia Pacific Comscore. Welcome to the session, Mr. Vasudevan. Mr. Vasudevan has over 19 years of experience in the telecom industry and holds a master's degree in telecommunication management from University of Maryland, USA. Mr. Vasudevan is the Business Development Director for Comscore, focusing on Ruckus Cloud, Ruckus Analytics, service providers, and OEM relationships across APJ. He has been with Ruckus for over 10 years now, and in his previous role, he was heading pre-sales engineering team in Asia Pacific region and was responsible for providing Ruckus customers and channel partners technical consulting and network designs to realize pervasive performance in their wired and wireless networks across various verticals. So without further delay, let's start with today's discussion. We encourage our audiences to share your questions with us in the Q&A section as the session progresses. Towards the end of the webinar, we will open the platform for Mr. Vasudevan to answer your questions. With that, over to you, Mr. Vasudevan.
Thanks, Nikhar. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the show. I think I'm certainly excited to talk about the opportunity that smart converged networks brings about change in the industry. I think, as the slide says, it's always been an opportunity where we talk about the challenges that these changes bring. But I think today, what I would be looking and more keen to talk about is what are the opportunities that changes in the industry that's actually evolving towards Industry 4.0 as an adoption, the opportunities that brings for all the IT folks in this to see how we can actually make some changes and enhancements to make it more efficient. So if I just kick off the industrial revolution and give you a snapshot of the whole history of things, this is a chart which I think most of you would be familiar with, have seen it a few times, but I just want to reiterate again. There were decades and decades of industrial revolution, but I think the industry 4.0, which probably started more than 10 years ago in 2011, was the primary point where new digital technologies, are blurring the lines between physical and digital solutions and systems that brings about changes in the global production systems, especially in factories. And I think with regards to that, we want to see how Industry 4.0 is actually turning manufacturing into more informative session or information gathering intensive session across, the entire value chain of the manufacturing industry. The amount of data that it generates, how we can actually make use of this data across the value chain and ensure that the systems are smooth and efficient in running. And that's where IT actually plays a big role here. If you see from a technology perspective, there are many technologies that have been there for a longer time. Many have matured. And I think the maturity of some of these technology, you are seeing ubiquitous use of these technology across in the industry today. For example, hands-free headsets, cloud computing, 3D printing. There are some that are right now in nascent stages itself. We're looking at examples like automated machine learning, 4D printing, or augmented intelligence. But there are technologies that as across the maturity in this sector, we do see adoption in different stages, and it all depends on the type of industry and the type of manufacturing setup you are. Are you in the high tech space or you're in the general manufacturing space? But I would say that certainly from a technology perspective, all these are going to be relevant at certain point of time in your premise today or even in the few years to come on. So if you see, if I can just summarize some of the key things, autonomous robots, simulations, IoT, which is enterprise IoT, industrial IoT systems, cybersecurity, integration to the cloud, augmented reality, big data. Some of these I've actually kind of put together as I think these are the most commonly used, I would say, or implemented today. I'm sure the rest are also. But the underlying factor for all this is connectivity. I think connectivity is going to be the key and is the key today, irrespective of what sort of technology you actually use, rather be it 5G, which has been talking about different benefits that it can bring into the sector. Wi-Fi 6, again, a technology that's been evolved over the years, an enhancement to the Wi-Fi standards, which is on par with 5G in terms of performance. Today, we're not going to be talking about the comparisons between Wi-Fi and 5G, but underlining point here is any form of connectivity you take, the biggest thing here is connectivity in the network. The network becomes the key and essential part of this. And more than that, the IP connectivity, the switching infrastructure, that also is an underlying factor that is becoming essential. So if you see from our estimates, we see around almost 40% of the equipment across the value chain of the manufacturing setup is always connected. And that brings about a huge challenge for IT managers to see how they can actually build about networks to address this connectivity issues. So from a characteristics perspective, I would probably characterize manufacturing sector in one category that is called the high-end manufacturing. In this high-end manufacturing, it's all about automated systems, robots, where business cannot be interrupted. The production stoppage is with any form of minor interruption in terms of data transmission or connectivity actually brings about a complete halt in the production system. It's an industry and a sector that is actually focused on high investment in technology, and that's something that is key, that is across both applications as well as network. And there's the second, I would probably put it across general manufacturing. I'm kind of keeping things simple at this point of time, where I'm sure there are many more classifications across this, but just from a today's session's perspective, just keeping it into where we talk about high-end manufacturing and general manufacturing. In general manufacturing, I would say it's more people-centric today. There are adoptions of technologies, especially with tablets and other things coming on board. The investments are relatively low, but it's actually increasing and improving over a period of time. The criticality of the network is not yet there where production systems will stop, but I'm sure there will be a time and place where eventually all these general manufacturing will move towards high-end manufacturing with the technology adoptions. And as I mentioned earlier in a couple of slides, where the different technologies that are coming into the industry, certainly this will bring about that change today. So, talking about Wi-Fi and the main scenarios of applications, certainly you have, offices, which is part of the whole sector, production, the factory floor, and then you have the warehouse logistics, because we don't certainly see as one area. Today, these systems or these networks are kind of segregated or separate. I'm sure there are some of them who are kind of integrated, but we see this as one common area across, where you want to have a seamless experience and a connectivity across different areas. And this is where we see Wi-Fi as a complementary radio access technology today. That's the best option that you have in terms of being the always best connected. We certainly see that this is the right tool for the job, especially with its capabilities and the value proposition that brings about, which I'll talk about in a few slides later, where the value proposition for you to be able to connect larger number of devices and also provide at the least cost in terms of being an always-on network itself. So from a factory or warehouse, the good network, some of the key essential points I would say is categorized into 5 pillars here. The first is industrial grade reliability. I think the network, as you see now, the network, especially in this revolution, as you start implementing technologies, the network has to be highly reliable, has to be able to basically address all the capacity and coverage requirements, have to address different client needs as well, and cannot afford any business interruptions at any point of time. The experience that the network brings about across the factory floor, addressing the connectivity to different types of devices. It could be standard laptops or devices or handheld terminals, or even AGV trolleys, basically moving around the factory floor or the warehouses. You have scanning PDAs as well. So we want to be making sure that all kind of applications, data, voice, and video, or some other low latency applications are supported across the network in a seamless fashion. More importantly, you want to be able to actually have the ability to manage this across a single network, with the ability of the network to be intelligent enough to address and show you, if there are some enhancements and improvements that needs to be made, how the information that is this network is generating is able to provide some, some form of automated assurances for you to be able to ensure the uptime of the network is 100%. More importantly, again, you see right now, the networks typically are wireless and wired, but the need for the dependency of both to be seamlessly connected and be supporting the high demand of the bandwidth and the applications is quite crucial. So as you upgrade and look at enhancements and across the network, I would certainly encourage you to look into a unified wired and the wireless network upgrade, where you are able to actually get the complete benefits and support the vision of the company that you are working for in terms of having it fully automated and fully resilient. Lastly, with so many devices, solutions coming on board, the whole space is getting complex, and you want to make sure that not only users, but also devices that users are using, but also things on the factory floor are completely secure and is brought on board seamlessly and securely, so that any form of attacks and issues are addressed at the very beginning, and ensuring that the complete communication is completely secure as well. So again, securing the network is one key aspect that the whole convergence brings about this change. So the need and the offering, talking about today, is I would kind of put it across in some 7 points here. These are the key essentials I've kind of listed down. I'm sure, having conversations with you guys, we will probably explore a couple of more as well. But in most simplified things, converged network is the key essential part, where you want to be able to build a network that is resilient enough to address both the wired architecture as well as the wireless architecture in a simplified manner, where you are able to manage it centrally itself. High capacity and large coverage with to support low latency applications and devices is quite crucial, and that's where the wireless network comes in place, and that's where the Wi-Fi 6 standards that we've kind of worked towards will help you address that as well. Wired network, again, this is something that we can't forget about, with high capacity and throughput, especially with a lot of devices in the factory floor, in the warehouse center, the offices, all turning into IP. We want to be making sure that the networks actually are evolving towards IPv6, especially with the advent of IoT networks across these industries. The requirement for IPv6 certainly will be a key part there. Securing all devices, again, as I mentioned, is a key aspect where you want to be able to seamlessly and easily connect these devices, secure them onto the network, and be able to manage them at scale at very, very easy way of doing things. Simplification and industrial IoT deployment certainly is there. Is again, IoT means different things for different people today. Even in the manufacturing sector, you have different technologies for IoT, you have different standards, depending what you talk about. The whole idea here is how do you want to be able to simplify the IoT, rollout of IoT, make it a business justifiable solution, and how you can actually leverage the existing infra that is being built upon and roll out there. So that's something that, we would talk about to see how we can actually simplify the rollouts of IoT network and what are the kind of solutions you have there. Ultimately, with all this connectivity today, you have a lot of information that's been generated. And this information that's generated, you want to make sure that the network is up and running at all points of time. And that's where the AI-driven network intelligence kind of builds across, giving you network assurance as well to ensure that, from an IT perspective, it helps you on your day-to-day operations and job to ensure that, everything is running smoothly without hiccups. Ultimately, what you want to do is to be build a very scalable infrastructure that is able to be deployed and managed centrally across the manufacturing floor, the logistics, the warehouse, the offices, and the distribution centers. So you would, in the past, probably people have built segregated networks, separate networks. Now we have the technologies and the capabilities to actually build a centrally managed network that can be spread across geographies but be seamlessly managed across a central location. So I'll cover some of these things in a few minutes on a slide-by-slide basis, but something this is, I would say, summarizes the whole smart manufacturing network requirements. So for network, converged network perspective, Ruckus, the most important thing is the controller, where we have the ability to actually bring together the different systems, the wired, the wireless, other IoT systems, and security as well, everything on board onto a central platform so that it helps you manage it from a single pane of glass. I think that kind of simplifies the whole way of how you manage networks today instead of looking at multiple systems. The converged network access components are basically looking at the wireless network, which is basically the wireless access points, the Wi-Fi 6 access points. We kind of build access points for every occasion. It has built-in Bluetooth and Zigbee today. For the US markets specifically, we have a version of LTE which is called CBRS that is available as well. Unfortunately, it's not available for the India markets yet today because of regulatory concerns. But again, that's something available. And for other IoT solutions beyond Zigbee and BLE, we have the ability to add them on a module basis via the USB connector that we have. So again, wireless deployment, traditional access points with convergence will certainly help you deploy for different occasions and scenarios. The wired network that kind of powers up all these and manage the infrastructure, any form of IP network that is being deployed. It could be surveillance, CCTV cameras, it could be IP devices across different locations as well. It has the ability to be powered with the ability to have a very simple, flexible, and scalable switching platform, which has the highest stacking capabilities, but also has the highest port density with high power output with low power consumption. So this is something that from a wired converged perspective, we can certainly have this integrated to address the bandwidth needs that a smart factory is required. And ultimately, how you want to be enabling the IoT solution, an IoT suite of products that kind of simplifies and actually helps out the infrastructure spend on IoT. Again, each of you will have different use cases. I'm sure we can explore some of these on a one-to-one basis to understand, but the idea here is to how we can address on a generic basis and simplify the rollout of IoT and make it more business friendly as well. So that's something that I'll talk about in a few slides, but this is what I would say is the key components across converged network. The goal of Wi-Fi 6 today, certainly it supports high density networks. If I can just pull up a few bullet points to show why Wi-Fi 6 is essential for you guys to consider. Looking at the network density, the number of devices that comes on board, the connectivity requirements, and more devices coming onto the network. Wi-Fi 6 certainly has the ability and the technology to support more and more devices simultaneously today. It certainly is key from a high density perspective. The modulation technologies allows you to actually have multiple devices be transmitting at the same time, and certainly scheduling good uplink speeds and downlink speeds as well at the same time. So any form of real-time applications that we are doing across the factory floor, certainly it helps. As I said, it certainly helps you in addressing several different types of data or voice or video. Again, different applications have different bandwidth requirements, latency requirements. This technology has the ability to support all of them efficiently. One of the key aspects of Wi-Fi 6 again would be how it has the ability to actually improve the lifespan of the devices connected to it as client devices. The ability to basically let the devices sleep over longer periods of time so that they actually can save battery life and have the ability to connect at certain intervals, and the coordination between the APs and the devices at certain points of time to make it awake so that it can actually communicate certainly helps in improving some of these efficiencies as well. That's something that is quite unique from a Wi-Fi 6 perspective, and certainly it's it's useful for any sort of environment, be it indoor or outdoor type of deployments. The third aspect of this is the wired infrastructure, which is something that I would say I wouldn't say it's neglected, but certainly is being thought about at a later stage. But I would say we have to look at all these solutions together at one point of time, because as you do upgrades, each one has its own dependencies. Wi-Fi 6 has its own dependencies on what sort of a network you're built across. Certainly, you need to have a good, reliable multi-gigabit Ethernet network with high port density and high power outputs as well. But more simply, how we can actually build an architecture that's scalable, that's is simplified as well, and can support for future enhancements and bandwidth requirements. 100 gigabit Ethernet switches or connectivity towards the core is certainly essential, because this is something that's going to last for a long time. So this is something that as you build across the networks to address smart manufacturing, you want to ensure that the wired infrastructure that is there also is grown and is deployed to address the future needs itself. So this is something, a simplified network architecture, I would say, certainly helps you build across a smart manufacturing outlet. Security solutions. This is something that is interesting. We have kind of two different solutions here that I'm presenting. First and foremost is the simplified version of how do you onboard devices. You have devices today that you use on a day-to-day basis. You have IoT devices today. So how do you actually secure these devices onto a network system quite seamlessly and quite easily? That's the Ruckus Cloud Path enrollment system that we have, that kind of simplifies device onboarding, makes it certificate based, also has the ability to integrate to a public key infrastructure that we have as a complete solution, where a PKI based full certificate life management system is offered as part of our ComScope solutions as a services today. So this is something we can actually look into offering, in addition to a very simplified network access system that brings upon devices, manage your devices simply, but again, to ensure that with different PKI types, different renewal, revocation of certificates and devices come on, and complete life cycle of these devices is managed centrally from a central location. These are all cloud-based applications today, and this can be be deployed across multiple geographies if required. So it kind of simplifies and ensures that devices are up to date and is completely securely onboarded at any given point of time. From an IoT perspective, again, this is something that Ruckus is looking to do, is to leverage the existing infrastructure that we have built across to deploy these wired and wireless infrastructure, leverage these existing network cable infrastructure that we built out, ensuring that it's fully integrated and seamless. Some of these IoT use cases, as you see here, building management system, like for example, it might be applicable for you and in your offices and factories itself. Well, very simple, like for example, environmental automatic fire systems, toxic gas monitoring. Something that is interesting that's come about is the occupancy detection and control, which is quite relevant in today's context, where you want to be making sure that you have safe distancing across different locations and venues. How do you actually, going green is one of the big aspects of all sectors of industries today. How do you want to be able to actually do automatic scheduling on lighting, and how you actually can control it over a single network today? You're deploying a network. These IoT systems, when you deploy them on an individual basis, you have to deploy them like a wireless network, and that brings about additional costs. And each of these systems are on different technologies. How we can actually integrate and bring it over a single IP infrastructure is what we are looking to offer. Across logistics centers, you do have other use cases where you can actually track assets, track people, look at different use cases. You certainly have physical security aspects for surveillance cameras, security alarms. Again, these are some things that we have worked on towards integration. If you have specific vendors that you work with, we are more than happy to have those discussions to see how we can integrate. Telemetry systems is something that you can look at, where you can actually look at some conditions in some manufacturing outlets and factory floors and offices and other locations would need to have temperature control and monitoring systems. This is something that you want to be looking to as well to do. So again, I've kind of listed on few use cases. I'm sure there are many, many more use cases across the industrial IoT sector that you'll be looking at today. So from a stakeholder's perspective, what does all these use cases bring about, right? So there are two sets of people here. There are different stakeholders in this whole organization and ecosystem where, one set of people are looking at the information technology, where IoT devices brings about, bringing together IoT solutions for users, devices that users brings about, how you want to be able to seamlessly integrate that, looking at, applications and services there. And then you have operational folks and the technology folks who are looking at infrastructure, primarily looking at facilities today. And you have IoT solutions with regards to that as well, where you can actually bring both of these guys to integrate. And that's where, you are kind of looking at a convergence of stakeholders, where you're looking from a facilities perspective, but also from a people's perspective and assets perspective. You can actually share the same infrastructure and build out solutions that kind of addresses some of these use cases. So again, this IoT network that we kind of looking at as a convergence simplifies this rollout applications. So from a solution view perspective, I would just put it across as shown here is you do have the wireless access points. That's the key part of the network that kind of brings about the integration to different IoT solutions, the enterprise IoT solutions that's based around Zigbee and BLE, and Z-Wave potentially through a USB port. But you have other applications for IoT. We can certainly explore to see how we can actually integrate via the USB interface that we have today. Again, from an integration management perspective, the data applications could be residing on any cloud infrastructure today for you to be able to provide a single policy and a single dashboard view. Sensors networks, again, can be deployed across different applications and verticals and use cases in offices, in commercial contexts, as well as industrial spaces. So depending on a unique specific requirements, this solution kind of integration addresses that application. Something that might be useful in today's context, as I mentioned earlier on, is the occupancy and the space utilization today. So this is, we work with some third-party IoT vendors, and our solutions that we have the capabilities to actually find out and show that, with the building integration with the building management systems, how dense is a specific location or a venue being occupied, and what are the spacings like as well. So this is something that might be applicable in your offices or in your businesses today, but that's something that we're looking at as an additional enhancement as capabilities. Energy management certainly is a key thing. We have integrated with building management systems, the light control systems, and HVAC systems as well, and vendors. So if you have some specific vendors you work with, we're happy to have those discussions and see how we can bring them on board. It's quite easy to do that. Again, these dashboards and APIs that we have kind of integrates easily and helps you build out a single network of dashboard providing insight. So again, very very few use cases are kind of brought about, but it certainly gives you an idea as to what we can do across, the venue. So, till now we talked about everything in a network and how evolution has happened, or the expectation of technology and adoption of technology across the manufacturing sector. The key essential part here is the network is becoming a key critical element of a smart manufacturing. That's the underlying part. What technology you use, the kind of applications you serve, network is becoming absolutely critical. And from a network being critical perspective, it brings about a huge challenges and loads to the IT folks who actually manage these networks. So how we can actually go about, simplifying this today, I would say it's more about how do you juggle some of these things. You're basically a fireman. We are able to, at the last minute, you're out there to put out fires, but how we can actually improve that aspect of, the whole role, where you don't want to be fighting fires and juggling issues at any given point of time. The future is all about data, and again, the data that this network generates with the help of ML and AI based solutions that we have, helps you actually be more smarter, actually have a better understanding of the network, understand how your network is behaving, how your network is moving towards, what is the capacity utilization of these networks, and how you can actually build it over time or in scalable fashion as well. So that's what all AI is doing about. And if I can simplify from an AI perspective, in analytics, I've kind of put it across in two categories. One is the IT analytics and one is the network analytics. The IT analytics, I would say, is especially from a manufacturing perspective, they rely on a lot of, with new technology on board, they rely on a lot of embedded intelligence using AI, IoT, and other tech applications. These are more industrial applications and processes, software solutions that helps you run machines and other solutions there, the hardware that is across the factory floor. That's the different set of IT analytics that those vendors can provide. The portion that we're going to be talking about today is the network analytics, where all these devices that are there across these different venues, they are all seamlessly connected onto the network. And that network basically generates data, and how that data is being used, and for you to be able to make decisions when you are managing networks in a seamless fashion. I think that's where we are going to be talking about. So I'll be more talking about the network analytics piece today. The IT analytics piece is, certainly I'll leave it for the expert vendors that offer solutions across applications in the manufacturing sector. So from a Ruckus analytics and network analytics perspective, what we look at is, have the ability and simplify the network, the data that is being generated in the network, the things that are happening in the network, and present to you in a very simplified form, so that on a day-to-day basis, your job of managing the network becomes very, very easy. The whole idea is to simplify the network management piece and understanding and ensuring that the network, is functional across different types of venues, and it automatically classifies issues. It helps you understand the critical aspects of the network, which areas are congested, which areas are underutilized, what are the different types of devices that is being connected onto the network, how are they behaving. It also helps you build towards a bigger resiliency across the network, for building, help you build future capacity as well. So some of these things, probably you would not have the ability, the insights in the past. It would be of manual, information. But right now with the analytics tool, it actually helps you give insights into the network, on the health of the network, from a user perspective, how seamlessly different users are being connected, how different applications are being served, what are the SLAs that different application that is required is being addressed as well. So some of these things are built across with the machine learning and the AI tools that is there as part of the cloud applications and services, and provides you valuable information to be able to manage this seamlessly. So this is something that I would certainly encourage some of you guys who are already using our solutions to explore the Ruckus analytics, that helps you actually provide better insights into the network and provide you network assurance solutions as well. So from this is something that is quite interesting. The Harvard Business Review did a survey, and typically from an analytics perspective, the number of people that are involved to make the purchasing decision, around 6.8 people. There are different folks, across this who make those decisions, and some of them are the network manager, the IT managers, CTO, the IT operations folks, the service desk manager, and the finance manager. Each of them have different aspects and views of how each of these solutions look at and how what the solution actually brings in value to them. From a network manager perspective, it's more about end user experience, making sure that all his clients, customers within the organization, whoever is using the network is happy, is able to do on his day-to-day basis. He wants to ensure that the network is performing up to the SLA that is being defined and deployed and designed. Certainly, you want to ensure that the network is never underutilized and never overutilized as well, ensuring that any future enhancements or capacity planning is done at much earlier stage. And you want to be able to troubleshoot networks and issues that keeps happening sometimes across the network at the very beginning. The service desk manager, again, is a key essential part where basically as part of the IT operations team, look at incident resolution. So integration to backend systems as well is essential, so that any ticketing system integration, you want to be able to actually help troubleshoot. Certainly gives that, provides you with all key essential KPIs as well. The IT operations for folks certainly look at end-to-end service analysis. They want to be ensuring that how is your wired network performing, how is your wireless network performing, and how are basically the other systems across these networks as a end client device, how are they performing. You design and deploy networks based on certain SLAs across different geographies and different use cases. You want to be making sure that these SLAs are being met and application usage is at the most optimum. Again, IT manager basically looks at, or a CTO looks at, utilization trends, looks at future investment decisions. When do we upgrade these networks? What sort of decisions you want to look at to enhance these technologies as well. And the finance, basically, or the CFO looks at the total cost of ownership, and especially we're looking at from a operations perspective is to ensure that these tools help simplify and bring about efficiency from an IT network perspective. So that's something that the CFO looks at, right? So from a scalability perspective, we do have certain solutions that we can. I remember I talked about in the first slide was about controller. This controller could be deployed across different architectures depending on your choice, your organization's preferences as well. Most of them today, I think I would say goes with on-premises hardware-based controllers today, but certainly we can actually look at virtualization as one key aspect as you look at NFV technologies. Again, the aspect of going centralized based as well is possible with the help of virtualized controllers today, or you want to look at public cloud. So again, the capabilities and enhancements that these architecture brings about is quite seamless and actually helps you manage these from a central location. Instead of building out disconnected networks, it certainly helps you deploy these networks across from a single location. So here's an example, kind of an architecture that I've put across, where in the past you would have different locations and different venues having each networks, and each of those are managed by different people on the local side itself. But with these technologies I kind of mentioned about, it actually helps you deploy a centrally managed network with a distributed site function as well. We have technologies today with edge functions on remote sites, have the ability to actually deploy them, manage them remotely, and seamlessly integrate and having a central services. So I know this is a busy slide, but certainly, what we're looking at to explain here is a centrally deployed management network will certainly help you deploy and simplify the network management piece, giving view centrally across all locations seamlessly, ensuring that complete user connectivity is secure and is managed easily, and overall cost also of doing this is way simplified. So in terms of conclusion, I would say from a networks perspective, Ruckus Networks basically you have different components. You have the Wi-Fi client devices, you have the IoT. We can probably skip the CBRS and the LTE from our use case perspective here in India, but certainly the increasing performance requirements is there. all these end user devices generating a lot of bandwidth requirements, performance requirements. You are moving from 1 gig to multi-gig requirements, both from a wireless perspective to a wired perspective, and from access to core perspective, going to almost 100 gig network. So ultimately, what you're looking at is to build an infrastructure that is resilient to address the future capacity needs as you have more and more devices connected, as you adopt multiple technologies that I mentioned in the earlier slides about the maturing technologies in the industrial sector that is being implemented. Everything consumes bandwidth and requires connectivity. That's something that we know we look to do. And you can basically look at one option of this is to have cloud services that helps you manage it centrally across all venues and locations. Very simplified form, I would say it's a converged network infrastructure that actually brings about integration to all devices, all networks, all infrastructure today, and helps you manage it easily. So be it client devices, infrastructure devices, wired, wireless, security, everything can be actually converged onto a single platform for you to be able to simply connect and manage today. Ultimately, this is something I kind of want to close off with from a thought perspective that, at CommScope, at Ruckus, we basically have this something called smart spaces, which is, I would say a smart manufacturing, smart factory is also a smart space, a building is also a smart spaces, a hotel would be a smart space, a school would be a smart space as well. But a smart space is basically where a converged network is built across, where the connectivity is used with either technologies of copper fiber, cellular, DAS, IoT. You have power switching and other infrastructure that helps you provide these connectivity to these devices, powers these devices, edge devices that actually let you automate things, build IoT, interesting, intelligent applications as well. You build a future-ready infrastructure that actually could support IoT adoption quite easily. Build a security-based application across where you want to be ensuring that you have a seamless connectivity across these technologies and have a full connected space as you build across. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for listening in for the last 40 minutes or so. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have today.
Well, that was quite a power-packed session today. With that, we will quickly move on our Q&A session. So, Mr. Vasudevan, the first question that we have from our audience today is, what technical challenges do IT teams face while deploying converged networks for an autonomous manufacturing unit, and how to mitigate them? Over to you, sir.
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. And if you see from an automated manufacturing setup, if you're looking at automation, one of the key things that we need to understand is what this network requirements are from a both bandwidth perspective, from a network perspective, and the evolution. And what aspects of this is going to be looked at in terms of ensuring that a seamless network is deployed. So, as I said earlier on, it used to be all about expanding or upgrading networks either on a wireless first and then wired first. But I think today, with this evolution, we have to look at both aspects, both where from a wired infrastructure perspective, everything moving towards an IP network, how your wired infrastructure can support these upgrades or support this enhancements, and also the wireless. So I think that is something, these challenges used to be in the past, but I think now I think that's easily addressable, where we certainly cost is an issue, right? Where how do you do upgrades across both? But I think that's where you will actually be able to bring out the best of the network that you are doing an upgrade for itself.
So, so one of our from our audience, we have a question that how can migration from Industry 4.2 to Industry 5.0 would be beneficial? What is your perspective and expert opinion on it, sir?
Well, I'm not sure what Industry 5.0 brings about changes today, but certainly if you see the slide that I had about Industry 4.0, there are a lot of things that's coming about. And I think Industry 4.0, again, as I said, was almost conceptualized in 2011. And a lot of technologies that is being thought about as part of that revolution is mature today. And I'm sure the Industry 5.0 is looking to enhance that with more automation and more robotics, I would say, and augmented AR, VR applications. So I think if I can summarize, if you can address the network to be resilient enough to meet the needs of Industrial 4.0, I'm sure it will be able to address some of the initial requirements of Industrial 5.0 itself. It's a matter of time that we will be there, but I think the key aspect here is to be able to have a network that is built to support all these applications and key bandwidth requirements. Yeah.
Right, sir. So we have one question which is regarding security and Industry 4.0. So someone is asking, once Industry 4.0 has been implemented, then how to safeguard the process and critical data from cyber criminals and hackers? What is your opinion on it, sir?
Yeah, so I think, as I said, there are two aspects of this. One is from a security perspective, you want to be making sure that you have a good network security built across. And second is you also have application software security that is built across. So again, because in this evolution, that Industry 4.0 is being about, more and more devices are going to be connected onto the network. And what that means is more devices are going to be basically potential accessible as well. So one key aspect is moving from IPv4 to IPv6, so that's kind of addresses the connectivity requirements as well. But second is ensuring that all these devices and elements that come onto the network, how they are securely onboarded and connected is the key part. That's the first thing. And of course, you have the key aspects of firewalls and everything going to the cloud. It could be a virtual, a private cloud, a public cloud, doesn't matter what form of cloud it is. It's all about ensuring that these devices are, when you secure them on board, they're always done a posture check. They're always check for the latest and software upgrades as well, ensuring that any software updates that happens to ensure hacks doesn't happen is taken care of. Certainly firewalls and other applications is key. So it certainly simplifies the automation of ensuring that all devices on the network is secure and seamlessly managed at a single click of a button. I think that's the biggest key point that's being about.
Right, sir. So we have another question on Industry 4.0. So as amid the COVID-19 and the pandemic, the Industry 4.0 is one of the trending and one of the key element technologies that manufacturers and CIOs are implementing. So we have a question that what would be the capital investment to implemented Industry 4.0 and what would be the ROI? So the question is all about the business benefits and ROI associated with Industry 4.0 investment. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, I think this is something that I don't think it can be answered in a few sentences. It's quite complex, but if I can simplify things, it all boils down to what sort of a manufacturing setup and entity you are. If you remember one of the slides, I kind of simplified and segregated as a high-tech, high-end manufacturing and a general manufacturing. So at different aspects, even from a general manufacturing perspective, you have certain aspects of Industrial 4.0 technologies that you can adopt and implement that helps you move towards a completely automated and high-end manufacturing outlet. So again, it doesn't mean that doing everything is essential, but what is essential is key for your business is that what you need to do, because all of the whole idea about implementation some of these technologies is to bring about efficiency in the workplace, and bring about efficiency also brings about improved production, and also in terms of ensuring that the overall productivity of the employee and the time he's deployed is well utilized. So from a capital, it all depends on specific applications and use cases that you're looking at. So if you go item by item and see what is key for you, we could probably look into that and see what are the benefits that, again, when you're implementing some of these technologies, each of these technologies have certain benefits that helps you bring about overall cost. Like for example, if I look at cloud management itself, right? So right now today you would be doing segregated networks that are deployed independently today. A cloud-based network kind of brings about a big change where you can actually centrally manage everything seamlessly. You don't have to be physically located on the site to do that. That is a ROI that I would look at to see what it can help you do instead of going onto a site where in the last 2 years it was very difficult to go on site to do anything, right? So you but able to do things remotely helps you kind of bring about those changes as well. So each of these technologies has to be looked at individually on their key requirements and see what are the business benefit and how can it save costs. That's how I would see ROI. But yeah, it's quite a complex question, and it's a not an easy thing to answer in this kind of a session, but certainly it's doable, I would say.
I totally agree with you, and that's what we have heard from the industry leaders and CIOs recently. So, sir, as we have talked about the digital maturity of Indian manufacturers, we have a question from an IT professional about digital twin model. So the question is about what is the role of digital twin while setting up industrial IoT solutions and how it is beneficial for a manufacturing unit. What is your take on it, sir?
So digital twin, especially from an industrial IoT perspective, I don't have too much experience in terms of the value that digital twin brings in, especially in industrial IoT solutions today. Certainly, the resiliency that the digital twin that can bring about will certainly help. But I would say, the key aspect of bringing about IoT solution is to see how, from a manufacturing setup, it can actually enhance and improve certain aspects. Again, it all depends on what sort of systems and solutions that you're looking to bring as part of the implementation. How much resiliency you want to build across is something that we have to look into. But I would say so this is something that I probably have to come back to Mr. Sathwik and revert back on the key role of digital twin. I don't have a full answer on that today.
Okay, sir. Moving on from the digital twin model, so there is a question about how Drucker's solution integrate edge capability. So the question is about where does the edge capability sit in your solution architecture, and how the solution can help the manufacturing unit for boosting efficiency and also speeding up the speed to market. What is your take on it?
Yeah. So if you guys remember the slide, basically the whole idea here is initially we deployed, or everyone deployed segregated networks across different venues, right? So you would have a factory floor, you would have offices, you have warehouses, logistics, you would have even distribution centers, and across the value chain, each one was an island. So you have technologies there, which with a central managed solution, either with an NFE or cloud controllers, you have the ability for some of these data to reside locally itself. And we have solutions that we can probably take it offline and show you how some of these edge solutions could be residing on premise for you to ensure that some of these applications and services are terminated at the edge on the remote locations or remote venues for you to be able to do that. But they're all kind of centrally managed from a central cloud controller today, or a virtual controller today. So that's something that we can take it offline and have that conversation.
So, sir, now let's talk about the remote working and hybrid working model. So we have a question that how will converged networks add value to a hybrid working model? It would be very interesting to have your opinion on it from a technological as well as a business perspective.
So from a business perspective, a converged network that lets you what it helps you do is to have a simplified management across all locations or different locations for different users being managed centrally. I think that's one of the key aspects. If you're looking at work from home, or you're looking at going to office, you want to have the ability to actually have a zero trust network that is built across to ensure that the connectivity that an employee has from anywhere is completely secure and seamless. So that is something that we in Ruckus we are working towards, and have some partners that we work together to ensure that the zero trust network kind of is implemented across seamlessly for the very use where we can actually look at either from a work from home or from a remote location or directly from office, the experience is completely secure. And a converged network that kind of helps you address some of these key aspects to ensuring that users and devices are centrally managed and easily managed, and the user experiences are always maintained.
Right, sir. So with this, we bring our session to a close. Thank you very much, Mr. Vasudevan, for being with us today. We definitely got to learn a lot from the perspective shared by you. With that, we come to the end of today's webinar. Before we wrap up, I want to wish all our audiences safety and the best of health. Team Economic Times wishes you all a more positive, brighter tomorrow. Stay safe, everyone. Stay healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Okay.